This video contains spoilers for God of War 2 and God of War 2018. In a GDC talk recently published to YouTube, Warren Spector, lead designer of the first System Shock and the Deus Ex franchise, advocated for games to further explore the concept of narrative agency, narrative obviously meaning the story of a game. On the other hand, agency is the player's ability to meaningfully interact with an element of a game. For instance, imagine a player is presented with two paths. One leads to danger, while the other goes over the danger. One player might prefer the high path to avoid the danger or to reach something more appealing farther down the path. However, another player might rush into the danger for the thrill of a challenge or the promise of a reward. In this example, the player is meaningfully interacting with the level design of the game and therefore has agency. Agency also appears in skill trees, where players can invest in their preferred playstyle, or in combat, where the fight is won or lost based on their strategy and tactics. Basically, an element of a game provides agency if it cares about the player's preferences or skills. This isn't just a neat feature of video games, agency is the essential building block of all gaming, distinguishing it from every other art form. And this is where we get to God of War. Our definition of narrative agency is the ability for a player to meaningfully interact with the story of a game. Some games are built on narrative agency, namely role-playing games like The Witcher or branching narrative games like Telltale's The Walking Dead. God of War 2018 is the kind of game that doesn't provide much narrative agency at all, but it's obvious why. The creators of God of War intended to tell a story exactly how they wanted it to be told, and that wouldn't be possible if the players could make contrary decisions. Imagine a version of this game in which Kratos and Atreus begin with the same estranged relationship, but the players can instead have Kratos treat Atreus with doting affection. That's not what the creators of God of War wanted for this story, so that kind of player action isn't permitted. At first, this disappointed me because I wanted to do things in the story rather than watch the story, but at least the writing was compelling in a way that nearly no other video games are. For many players, that's enough, but there's one agonizing moment when the player's lack of agency cripples God of War's potential for storytelling.
The cycle ends here. Must be better than this.
There's plenty enough reasons for Kratos to kill Baldur. He's about to murder his own mother, Freya, who Kratos values more than him. Baldur ignores Kratos' demand to leave Freya alone, which means he might still be a threat to Kratos and Atreus, and, as Mimir puts it, the world is just better with Freya than Baldur. What we're left with is a compelling protagonist that we've spent many hours empathizing with in an incredibly designed game doing something that's perfectly reasonable. The only problem, then, is the reasons not to kill Baldur. These reasons are not hypothetical. They're baked into the DNA of the game by the writers in such a way that I'm surprised the game ended the way it did. I have a theory about how they might be using them in the sequel, how Kratos' decisions, however well justified, will have painful consequences and reflect a growth of character still to come. I don't think it's any coincidence that the last thing Kratos says to Baldur is exactly what Zeus said to Kratos before trying to murder him. But while that may be significant for longtime fans of the series, and may be setting up a theme for the sequel, it's not important for this game. For now, let's just explore this statement. The player may not have wanted to kill Baldur, and one reason has to do with who Baldur is. During the second trip to Helheim, Kratos and Atreus witness Baldur re-experiencing the moment he confronted his mother about the spell she cast on him. Baldur is now indestructible, but can't feel anything, and when he asks Freya to undo the spell, she lies and says it's irreversible. After the scene ends, they leave Baldur in the frigid wind, weeping in despair and frustration at what's befallen him. The writers could have explained Baldur's backstory through dialogue with Freya or Mimir, but instead they wanted you to see his pain. When we fight Baldur in the finale, we now understand that Baldur isn't pure evil. He's broken and pitiful, and some players may want to help him rather than kill him. Another reason to not kill Baldur isn't about who he is, but rather who Kratos is. The God of War has a long history with hyperviolence, killing whenever and whomever he wanted, as long as it achieved a goal. One of the things that this new game did to revitalize the franchise was to repudiate this younger Kratos' brutal ethos. It's why he agrees with the Figment of Athena when it calls him a monster, why he wraps his forearms to hide the marks of his old weapons, and why he's so vigilant to make Atreus a better person than he believes himself to be. The game makes a point that violence in even justifiable circumstances has a severe cost. Just watch this scene after Atreus kills Modi.
You killed against my wishes. You lost control.
Haven't you been teaching me to kill?
I've been teaching you to survive. So I teach you to kill, yes, but in defense of yourself. Never as an indulgence.
Nobody cared about him anyways. What's the difference?
There are consequences to killing a god!
Atreus' dialogue here is alarming. The only creatures we've been fighting have been those who attacked first, or monsters, but Atreus hasn't learned to distinguish when to fight. Killing has just become the best method of conflict resolution. If it stands in the way, you don't find alternate routes or question if what's on the other side is worth it. You just kill it. If this moment is the climax of this chapter of Atreus' life, then the resolution is when he gets angry with his father and shoots him, the moral lesson being, there are times to be violent and times to be not. But the reason that distressed me the most when I was playing through the finale had to do with Freya. Never have I played through a boss fight in which the boss's mother, one of your closest allies in the game, is on the sidelines furiously begging you to stop. I stood still, wondering if that might trigger an event by acting the pacifist, but when it became clear I had to keep going, the fight lost all satisfaction. Make no mistake, Kratos is not virtuously defending Freya at this point. She several times refuses his aid, accepting the risk of her own death for the chance of redeeming Baldur and herself. Remember, she bears responsibility for what Baldur has become. Freya deadened the world to Baldur, stripping away all affectations it may have on him and separating him from nearly all consequence. When nothing can be done to Baldur, the only relationship he has left with the world is what he can do to it. And with a father like Odin, how else is it going to turn out? In fact, Baldur is sounding dangerously like Atreus during the boy's rebellious, violent phase, both carrying a mixed blessing or curse, forced upon them by their parents and raised with bloodshed as their only context. If we can recognize that Atreus deserved a chance to change, why not Baldur? None of this may have changed your mind about whether Kratos was justified in killing Baldur, and obviously sparing him would have serious ramifications on their current plans for the sequel. But now we're seeing an alternate path, one that would have allowed the players frustrated with the current ending to make a choice without compromising Kratos' character or the overall story of this game, an opportunity for narrative agency. Would you defend what's good in the world and stamp out evil? Or are you willing to risk faith that evil can be redeemed? As genius and groundbreaking as God of War 2018 is for its own franchise and gaming as a whole, this could have been its boldest design choice by far. A God of War game that doesn't have to end in blood. Narrative agency doesn't need to involve branching storylines or dialogue trees. All the designers need to do is decide who is more important, Kratos or you. Thanks for watching.